As much as I know that America's a great country and I love this country, what I find a little bit perplexing and a little bit contradictory is that in the system, a murderer can spend life in prison without the possibility of parole. And yet, a rapist spends only a few months or even just a few years until their release. Which to me is a little weird because the way I see it, rape is actually worse than what's it called, rape, murder, because when a victim went through rape or child molestation, for example, they don't have peace of mind. They feel that pain for the rest of their life. I can't speak for all, but a lot of them do. However, when a victim is murdered, at least they can rest in peace. But there's no peace when a person has been molested or raped at a young age, or even at a much later age. That trauma is there with them for the rest of their existence. So, this is why I always believed that a rapist should either spend the rest of their existence in either a rapist should get life in prison without the possibility of parole, like what happened with Ariel Castro, who was sentenced to literally 1,000 years in prison, which was just in what, 2011, 2009, or better yet, to speed up the process a little quicker, they should be put on death row, and they should be the first ones to be put on death row. That's just how I see it. So it's a little strange to me how a rapist doesn't get life in prison, but a murderer does. And rape is worse. You know, you're not just hurting the victim, but you're hurting the families as well. Another thing that also annoys me with the prison system is that if a person stole anything, he goes to jail or he goes to prison. And I think that's a little unfair because when you're putting someone in prison, you're not just punishing the culprit, but you're punishing the families as well, and you're punishing the culprit, but you're punishing the culprit's family as well, and they're going to be put through a lot of heartache and headache, worrying about their loved one who's in prison or whatever. I'm not saying that I should pity them. No, I'm not. I don't pity them really, but what I do think is that theft or even stealing is too much of a petty crime for something as severe as jail or even prison. Because it's bad enough that you're sentencing someone in prison, but yet they receive extra punishment by being put at risk for getting beat up, being jumped, being raped, and what's it called? Being mutilated and tortured by other prisoners or inmates for that matter. And then being in this nightmare, which are like prison riots and what have you. And then, in prison itself is a is a place that's the place itself is punishment enough, but what goes on in there is even worse. And on top of that, I mean, the family is already experiencing disappointment and pain. So I personally believe that if a person is going to be arrested for theft or any petty crime like theft or even stealing or shoplifting or whatever it is, they should be put into a rehabilitation program where they won't continue to do this kind of thing to support their habit or to survive in their own poor neighborhood or whatever it is. So I think that I think that something really needs to be done with the crimes that are being committed. And on top of that, sometimes when people have drugs and they use drugs, they get punished. But the funny thing is, they're the ones who are actually the victims. And even a prostitute who happens to be a victim of a pimp, for example, she herself gets thrown in jail for being a prostitute, and she's really the victim. So in a way, in this system, the prisoners, or should I say in this case, the victims, are treated as the criminals, which to me is very unfair. And once again, it's just extra punishment for the family. And the fact that there are more prisoners in America than the gulags during Joseph Stalin's regime, it's very telling, and it's not exactly a good look for the rest of the world, knowing full well we were known as the Promised Land during the immigration years of when immigrants started coming to America. So looking back on it now, it's not exactly a good example to the world that we have more prisoners than any other country in the world, even more so than the gulags during Joseph Stalin's regime. And as far as being a criminal is concerned and doing crimes, usually people will look down on somebody who commits a crime, whether it's theft or murder or even like rape. But if it's a celebrity or someone who's rich or famous or even both, it's funny how we give them a free pass, knowing full well that, unbeknownst to them, that they are subconsciously defending a rapist. Whether it's Bill Cosby or R. Kelly, Conor McGregor, Jeffrey Epstein, or even Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, or Donald Trump. They're all rapists, really. I mean, even the African American Republican senator in the 1980s, in the late 1980s, during the Franklin scandal, Lawrence E. King, in short, was known for Larry King. He molested and raped a whole bunch of kids in the Bohemian Grove. And even in this documentary, which was later on banned in the Discovery Channel, called The Conspiracy of Silence, it blows the whole thing wide open. So I find it a little telling and a little sad that society will turn a blind eye for someone who commits rape if they're rich and powerful. Even Brett Kavanaugh was another example, but he got a slap on the wrist. So the people in power, they get away with rape, but they don't get away with murder, which is the irony. Actually, they do get away with murder too. So sadly enough, this is kind of the society we live in, and there needs to be a change with the system. And now you know why. This is why I don't take the system that seriously. When it comes to punishments, yeah, I mean, I'll be careful not to break the law,